world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for, Monday, May 30th, 2021. No, 2022, Duane. Eventually, I'm going to get the year right. We're almost June. It's almost halfway there, and I still can't get the year right. But please subscribe to our YouTube page and join us in our journey to 1,000 subscribers right here on YouTube. If you're watching us live on Twitter, welcome to this weekend review from Major League Soccer. Canadian Premier League will be on Wednesday. Tomorrow, the Champions League. So, Duane, tomorrow we'll review this crazy day in Paris.
And lots to talk about, certainly on and off the pitch. We'll have lots to say on both. Let's bow our heads for a moment and thank the football gods for a great European season, which wrapped up on Saturday, I guess on Sunday, with the playoff finals. World Cup qualifying, exciting times coming ahead. The next little stretch is going to be good. So I'm going to enjoy focusing on MLS and CanPL for the next few months, next 2 months, and then we'll gear back up and we have a nice little carrot at the end of that. But no, I enjoyed the final. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about the troubles tomorrow too, unfortunately, but all that stuff will get covered.
And of course, when Duane's talking about the troubles, he's talking about outside the stadium, the police, and of course, the whole thing that happened that delayed the game to begin with. But let's talk today, Duane, about Major League Soccer. It was week 14 in Major League Soccer and quite the eventful weekend. I was on 3 games this weekend. It was really fun. So if you were a TVA Sport listeners and you love Major League Soccer, you had 3 games to watch this weekend. Last night, Seattle-Charlotte, that was quite fun. LA Galaxy, Austin 4-1. We'll talk about that one. I don't know why I wrote 4-0 here in the actual scoreboard, but it's 4-1 for Galaxy. And Austin, it was Diego Fagundes, a World League type of goal. Also, Javier Hernandez, Chicharito scored a beautiful goal. We'll talk about Dejan Joveljic later. We'll break that game down, as we will also do the 3 Canadian games. But Duane, when I look at this weekend's action in MLS, what comes to mind is, big wins. If we're looking for LAFC, 3-2, 5 goals in this one, 5 goals in Toronto, Chicago. We're looking at Montreal, Cincinnati, 7 goals in this one. New York, DC, 5 goals. Goals galore this weekend.
Certainly, and that Montreal-Cincinnati game is going to jump out and grab you if you had a chance to watch that one. It was a lot going on there. A couple minutes of madness for Cincinnati. Otherwise, they get the draw, but good for Montreal to persevere through that and to stop their little slump. We talked about that last week, how they kind of needed to make sure that they didn't get 3, because 3 is a slump, 2 is just a blip, and I kind of believe that. But no, they got it done against a Cincinnati team that, as we said last week as well, that we may be not giving enough respect to. Also, a comeback in Toronto. We're not going to see a lot of those this year, but it was good for the fans that were there, and exciting to come back there.
Duane, I'm not going to talk about Alejandro Pozuelo, so I'm going to stop you right now. I'm not going to talk about Pozuelo's contract so we can move on, okay? Oh, wait, I'm not the coach. I'm not Bob Bradley. I can talk about Pozuelo's contract if I want to, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, I have thoughts on it. Pozuelo is maybe my favorite TFC player ever. And I know that's a bold statement, but I just, his game is so silky when he's on. But yeah, we'll talk about that later. No, good result for TFC to get that, and made them. Had they not gotten the full 3 points, they would have really found themselves in a hole. They're still in a bit of a hole, but it's not like there's not dirt getting thrown over them anymore. Like they can see the light now.
We're talking about TFC. Might as well just start with TFC Toronto today. Sure. We'll go to Montreal after Vancouver. We'll break down also LA and Austin and Seattle, Columbus. No, actually, that was Charlotte. I can't read my writing, if what people are wondering. I write like a doctor, so that's not good. When we're looking at TFC, 3-2, a record of 4-7-3 this season so far. DeAndre Kerr scored the first goal for Toronto, and then a brace by Alejandro Pozuelo to tie the game, and then to get the W. One came from the penalty spot, and the other one was the game winner at the 78th minute. Alejandro Pozuelo, a golazo to give Toronto a victory. Look at these numbers. How the heck did Toronto win? 5 shots, 4 on target, but 37% possession, only 317 passes. 33 shots for Chicago, 9 on target. That is close to a third. That's very high. 63% possession, a lot of passes, a lot of accuracy. and they have one of the best goalkeepers in the league too. How did Toronto get that victory, Duane?
Are you watching the game or are you just looking at the stats? To do the old joke there. But look, the ball is round sometimes, and I think I was saying to you this off air, and this is pure theory, but maybe Bob Bradley's learning that TFC can't be a possession-based team right now, and maybe has purposely laid back a little bit and allowed Chicago to dictate the play in the hopes to get them on the counter. And they do have a lot of speed, TFC does up front, so it might not be the dumbest scenario to do that. It's not really the way Bradley likes to play, but nonetheless, maybe he's picked something up there. The other factor here too is, and I said this when we talked about Chicago a couple weeks ago, when they attack, they can't defend as well. So maybe part of the game plan was to let Chicago have a lot of the ball, in the idea that if they have the ball and they're going forward, they're not going to keep that organized shape that they are successful with when they're successful. I mean, who knows? It's also, Chicago's not a great team, based on the numbers, based on that number that counts the most. Look at them, they're at the bottom of the East, right? So that's part of it too. TFC has gotten a couple results in the last couple of weeks against teams that are around them, which is you have to do if you're going to climb up, but they still need to demonstrate that they can beat a better team, which they really haven't done yet. So nonetheless, it's a good 3 points for them. Whether or not they deserved it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. A nice day out. It was the first sunny kind of game day of the year in TFC. Fans were happy leaving the stadium. Good vibes. That's all that matters. They're not going to look at those numbers and care about them very much.
No, and they have to enjoy those days because there'll be less of those than the days where it's difficult. It is not a season where expectations and results are expected in Toronto. It is more of a build upon, if any success there is this year. So we'll see what Toronto can do with this victory, how they parlay it into. That's 2 good results in a row now for Toronto. And maybe going forward, they can continue coming back from the international break for Toronto FC. Of course, the benefit of not having a lot of good players is you don't lose a lot of players internationally. So for Toronto, they only have 1 player for Canada this time around. So we'll see how that affects their roster, or maybe they can recover, rest, and be better off coming the mid-June when the international break is over. Let's continue now. Let's go to Montreal. Stade Saputo. What a crazy game at Stade Saputo. 7 goals were scored in a weird, crazy game. It's a classic at this point. Montreal-Cincinnati, Duane. This was the 7th match between the two. There's 30 goals scored, both teams combined, in 7 games. That's an average of 4.3 goals a game between the two. And this one did not disappoint. 4-3 for Montreal, a record of 7-5-2 this season. Cincinnati, with this defeat, has a record of 6-7-1 this year. Still one of their best record ever at this point, and they're only 1 point away from their tally of last year. It's May still, so not bad for Cincinnati. Montreal, Joel Waterman scored his 2nd of the season. Ramel Kyoto is 4th and 5th of the season. Mathieu Choinière was able to score his first goal at home in his professional career. Good job, Mathieu Choinière. He had quite an emotional week playing midweek against his brother, David, who plays for Forge. With this victory, Montreal, Duane, has the best attack in the Eastern Conference with 28 goals. But they also have the 2nd worst defense in the league. Well, no, in the Eastern Conference. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But winning games like the Edmonton Oilers in the early 80s makes for very entertaining soccer.
And goals win games. We say that all the time. Now, you have to defend a little bit to win a championship, but that's not.
And to be fair, if we go to the expected goals against, Montreal's in the top 5 in the Eastern Conference. So there's a few really, really bad mistakes that are outliers that are skewing the numbers of the defense of Montreal. Let's just put it that way.
Well, there's been a couple games that are really skewing things. If you look at their, the medium goals against per game, it's probably much better than the average goals against per game when it comes to Montreal. But look, I mean, it's a great day out, and you got a good week for Montreal. They do the rebrand, relogo, the new logo, and that went over pretty well as far as I can tell. Then they go to the stadium and they have a big win. They score a lot of goals. Everyone's going to be happy. These are good moments for them. Montreal, to me, is in that 2nd tier in the East, as I've said a bunch of times this year. I don't think they're up at Philly, New York level yet. In fact, I don't know if we're going to go in detail in the New York game, but the New York City game, I mean. But to me, they're clearly showing that they are the best team in the East right now, and they are a step above everyone else. Montreal's not there because they're not full, and a game like this demonstrates this. But a game like this also demonstrates that this is a good team. They get a couple goals quick at the end of the first half, sort of first half and the second, and then here we go. It's a good result for them, and that's Cincinnati needs to defend that better. That said, if I'm FC Cincinnati coming out of this game, a road game, they have a couple, a little bit of a letdown there around the half, as I said. But other than that, they played pretty well. They got a couple late goals to make this thing look close, and it's not a bad road result for them, even if they don't get the points, because they're competitive now, and that's a positive thing for them.
Oh yeah, they have one of the best player this year, Luciano Acosta, who's playing really well. Brendan Vasquez, one of the best goal scorer in Major League Soccer this year so far also. So when we look at Cincinnati, I think they're on the right track. So that's a positive for Cincinnati. New York City is on top of the Eastern Conference with their victory. Philadelphia is second with 25 points. Montreal third. New York, Orlando, Cincinnati, and Miami. Miami with a big win climbs above that red line for the first time this season. Phil Neville might stay employed, Duane. I'm quite surprised. We'll talk about Kansas City because I don't know if Peter Vermes is going to stay employed, at least as manager, for long, because there's something going on, definitely. But when we're looking at the Eastern Conference, Toronto, DC, Chicago, yes, I think they belong there. Will New England get out of there? The news coming out of multiple sources that came out late last night is Adam Buksa might not ever play again for New England and might be on his way out next week.
Yeah, New England is having a hangover season for sure, and I would argue the biggest disappointment in the league right now is New England, because a lot of people would have picked them very high in the Eastern Conference. I don't remember where we picked them off the top of my head, but it certainly wasn't this low. And it's now at the point where you can't say it's just a blip. You can't say it's something that's not a trend. This is a team that the points aren't lying. They're just not playing well right now, and it's hard to pinpoint why, other than maybe teams figured out them. Maybe the Buchanan factor was more than we realized going into this. I mean, that's not just me talking as a Canadian fan. It's me looking at what they're doing in MLS, and that dynamicism up the wing's just not been replaced in the same way, right? That's something that they're missing a little bit, and it's hard to really get a pinpoint on that. But look, the points don't lie. The East doesn't lie. There's a whole lot of meh in the East right now, like meh. After Orlando, I'm gonna still wait and see on Cincinnati. So I'm gonna say after Orlando on those standings, it's just a bunch of I don't know. And any of those, I don't think any of the teams below the line can't make the playoffs, including Chicago and Toronto, but I don't think they're getting any higher than that line that I just created in my head, and that's really not going to get you very far in the playoffs.
No, you're right. And Charlotte is also a team we can talk about later when we break down Charlotte's travel to Seattle. They're not really playing well on the road. They're playing well at home, and their talisman striker hasn't scored in 8 games. He didn't play the game last night. He's already with his Polish national team, getting ready for some big important games. Speaking of Poland and national team and players and strikers, tomorrow, Duane, we'll talk about Robert Lewandowski out of Bayern Munich, on his way probably to Barcelona. We'll break that down tomorrow when we have more details in the news of the day in the world of soccer. Duane, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll break down the Western Conference games from the weekend. We'll look at Vancouver's big win on the road against Kansas City. What is going on, Peter Vermes? We'll look at that. We'll also look at LA's big game at home against Austin, a big victory. Signed Dejan Joveljic, and we'll also talk about Seattle's big win. Is Seattle back? From what I saw last night, I think they are. We'll be right back after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kev Larme joined by Duane Rollins as always. If you'd like to subscribe to our Patreon page in the next few weeks, probably days now, maybe about 8-9 days, we're going to have a brand new version of the Two Solid Dudes Soccer podcast. Patreon.com/sports podcasting network. Get ahead of the queue. Duane and I will talk about the Canadian men's national team on the road to Qatar. A great show dedicated to Les Rouges that will be, of course, available for patrons only on patreon.com/sports podcasting network, as Duane puts his Voyager scarf next to his face to make sure that you can support the Canadian Soccer Association's supporters group, the Voyagers, also by buying some merch.
Absolutely. Haven't heard any updates on whether they're going to replace that Iran game. Just as a quick update, that's a non-update really. But
it's June 30th, and that game was scheduled next weekend. So yeah. I assume that there won't be a game itself. Maybe it'll be a scrimmage against something.
Yeah, I think a scrimmage against the Whitecaps, the Caps that are still in town, is maybe, or like the University of BC or something, might be what happens here.
I was going to make a bad joke about the Whitecaps, but they just won a game against a decent team in the past. They're not decent this year. But, I was going to say, maybe that's how Vancouver can play and not lose, is play games that there's no winners or losers.
Yeah, fair enough.
But they won won this weekend anyways.
Yeah. Quickly, Danny Campbell, fans listening there, we're going to review the Campbell weekend on Wednesday because it really hasn't ended yet, so there's no point us reviewing it until it's done. So Wednesday for that, if you're looking for Campbell.
Because otherwise we're talking about like a 2-game segment. So I need a little bit more meat on my bone, and we'll get that meat on Wednesday. Making me hungry now, talking about meat. Let's talk about Vancouver's big win, Duane, on the road. A win signed, I guess, kind of Lucas Cavallini, because he did score the winner from the penalty spot. Lucas Cavallini, yes. Will he be back next year? I don't know. Probably not. There's a lot of things we can talk about Lucas Cavallini. Will he be in the World Cup roster? I don't know. Who knows? But he scored a goal at the 24th minute from the penalty spot to give a big victory for Vancouver. Their fourth of the season. However, a rare victory on the road for them. But Kansas City, a record of 3 wins, 8 losses, and 4 draws this year. They are 14th in the Western Conference. Yeah, this team is not playing for their manager. Will Peter Vermes be the next manager to go? That's a question. Will he be moved up like the legacy role? All right, Peter, it's time for you to become the president, okay? And we're gonna go in a different direction. Can you even do that? Those are very interesting questions, Duane. And I'm wondering what you think about Sporting Kansas City's season so far. There were some expectations, at least to be a contender in the playoffs, and then you never know what can happen. But is this the end of the Peter Vermes era in Kansas City?
Well, look, I mean, the thing about Peter Vermes is that for him to be moved up to the front office full time, that's a decision he's going to have to come to it on his own. Otherwise, they're going to have to fire him outright. The ownership would have to fire him outright, and I don't see that
it won't
happen.
So that's what you're saying. It won't happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Because who fires themselves? Like, come on. Who's going to be like, Marcelo Bielsa. Outside of Bielsa, I don't think there's anybody who actually who goes to the front office and says, look, for the benefit of your club, you should get rid of me. Nobody would say that. Everybody would be like, just pay me.
Yeah, look, and Vermes doesn't strike me, and I'm going to say this delicately, he doesn't strike me as someone who self-reflects a lot in terms of his own abilities. He has stuck with the same kind of ideas for a long time. They have been successful to a point. They did win a championship in the memory of this show. I think that might have been the last championship that happened before the show started, but vaguely in the memory of this show.
They won in 2013, so yeah, the last one before the show started.
Yeah, exactly. So they were the defending champions when we started this in 2014. We started this show in March 2014, if people are curious. But, look, I can't. It's hard to imagine SKC without Peter Vermes. He's part of the furniture there, right? Like he's part of the wallpaper. He's part of the whatever saying you want to throw on there. I think I'm making a few sayings up, but nonetheless, he's part of it. Whatever I'm doing here, it's hard to imagine. Look, they're not good right now, and to me, their problem has always been that they lack that last third killer instinct. They've got some good players wide. They can create some team goals. Johnny Russell had a good season last year, but by and large, they don't have a penetratable sort of forward that can really dominate in the way that championship teams in this league do. And so they're kind of the last sort of remnants of the MLS 2.0 era. and they do it excellently. They do it well. I mean, Salt Lake City does it as well too, a little bit on a different scale, like kind of trying that 2.0 model, which you have more of a balance in your roster rather than the big stars. And they just maybe are running out of time to do that successfully. And we're already seeing in the playoffs, and I think I've said this many times before, but I'll repeat it again here today. SKC's problem has always been depth when it hits the playoffs. They run out of steam. You look at their record in September forward in the last few years, and it's always it's like going up the mountain, and then you hit the top of the mountain. You got to go down, right? And they go straight down. They're falling. They're free soloing, and they're going down. Right?
It's not an easy decline. Yeah, it's never an easy decline. It's a cliff. It's like wow. So that's what usually happens in MLS too. But we'll see if Kansas City can recover or change their trends. It's not like they have just losses in a row, right? There's some away and a couple losses away, and so there's no momentum either. And you kind of need some positivity either to build up, or to fire a coach you need like a bad sequence. So maybe they'll just stay. But if I'm thinking about the coaches in danger, I'm thinking of Vancouver too. But if they had a win, we'll see. They're probably going to be patient. We're not looking at the most how do you say this, the politically correct, we're looking at an ownership group that will look at their bottom line before firing a coach, because it might affect the amount of revenue or profit, or just be a big expense. So I don't think Sandrini is going to be fired this year, but maybe in the offseason or something. We'll see if things don't turn around. Maybe they will. Maybe the Andiamo mentality and philosophy will evolve this year, and by the end of the season, things will be better for Vancouver. Who knows? But they got a big victory against Kansas City, 3-0 on the road. We'll look at the standings in the Western Conference in just a few minutes. Duane, last night, what a show. What a show in Hollywood. Actually, in Carson City, to be quite honest. It's not quite Hollywood, but I was impressed by Chicharito. I was especially impressed by Dejan Joveljic. He went into history last night, Duane. He is the first player in MLS history to contribute to 4 goals as a substitution. He came in, he fed Chicharito for a pass at the 61st minute. Then he scored a goal at the 64th minute. And then he scored another goal at the 88th minute. And not quite over. Then he fed Efrain Alvarez for maybe the goal of the week, if that still existed. He would have it also. What a performance for your upcoming player of the week. I'll give it to you in breaking news fashion. He's going to be the player of the week, Duane. Dejan Joveljic and the LA Galaxy 4, Austin 1. Big win for Greg Vanney and what I call the TFC diaspora of Marky Delgado, Eric Zavaleta, and company.
Oh, yeah, it is TFC's old-timers team in many ways, yeah, for sure. Although Mark Delgado is not that old. He's only 25 or something, which blows my mind. But anyway.
Exactly.
It seems like it's...
So Diego Fagundes, he's 27 years old, Duane, and he's been playing in the league for like 12 years. So that's why we're like, this guy's how old? Jeez, I remember when he was like 17. Anyways.
Yeah. My friends at the vocal minority have been using Fagundes as like their bleep over for swear words for years. It's like, I'm Fagundes and kind of
it's very similar to Italian swear words, right? So that's very, very similar.
Yeah.
But what a performance last night, and I have to say, it's unfortunate Austin lost. And this game, if it would have been in Austin, it would have been very emotional. The reason is Uvalde is close to Austin, right? So there was some representation. Austin actually played with a special patch on their jersey. Something you rarely see in MLS. A special patch in the middle of the jersey that was in the shape of the Texas state. And you had a red heart on where Uvalde is located in Texas. And this was also with a minute of silence that was respected across Major League Soccer. It was a way to bring attention to this tragedy that happened in Texas. And Austin, unfortunately, is the biggest city close to Uvalde, but they didn't get the win. Chicharito and his teammates got the job done.
Yeah, I'm not going to delve into politics too much other than say minutes of silence are lovely, but maybe do something about it moving forward. Anyway, that's my stick to sports moment there. Look, Austin, that's a statement game in a lot of ways, and who knows how emotional that was. As you say, it is close to the community, and that's affected everyone. And obviously, the closer you are to it, probably the more affected you are. So perhaps you can lay a bit of that onto the result there. But I don't want to be dismissive of the event, obviously, but nonetheless, it's a statement game for LA, who has kind of been up and down, up and down. Austin had been playing pretty well to knock them down and maybe say, yeah, you settle down there, expansion team from last year a little bit. And maybe that might even this out. I really still don't understand why Austin is doing so well. I really am struggling to figure that out.
Well, I don't think they're going to stay there. That's the thing. If I look at the standings, we can look in the Western Conference. They've already slid to fourth. They were second for a while, and I think they're going to continue their slide because eventually Seattle's going to come back up, Duane. We're going to break that down in a minute. It's going to be the last game we break down today, but Seattle's on the way up. They're not going to be below that red line for very long. They willingly sacrificed their beginning of the season for the CONCACAF Champions League. They've won it. And last night, they had their best lineup. But I think Austin is on the way down. I don't think their performance is replicable. I was working the game yesterday, so I was watching it very, very closely. And I didn't see Driussi the entire game. He's maybe one of the best strikers this year in MLS. And I was looking for him, and I still don't remember him impressing me at all during this game. Not a moment of brilliant at all. I didn't see anything from Austin last night, even though for parts of that game for LA, it was also very chippy uneventful, I guess is the best way to put it. And then they had moments of brilliance and it unblocked later on. But for parts of this game, LA did not look good also. And eventually they finished winning 4-1. But it wasn't an impressive performance to begin with this game. But, they don't turn things around. And I have to say, Greg Vanney influenced the result of this game. There was clearly a reaction. They switched Chicharito aside a couple times when there was a change and Joveljic went on. You see this picture and you could see on the camera side a few times. You see Dejan Joveljic walk, number 99, so the Gretzky standout. He walks to Chicharito and they talk about for 2 minutes together in the ears. And they're not whispering sweet nothings. They're talking about tactics. And from that moment, 2 minutes later, he scores a goal. Well, Chicharito scores. And then 10 minutes later, Joveljic scores. So Greg Vanney had a big influence in the result of this game.
Yeah, there's a few 99s in the league. Sure, Toronto's a 99 too. Anyway, Greg Vanney, I'm a big fan because I covered him close up for a lot of years. And he's a very thoughtful guy. Maybe makes me a little biased to him sometimes. I'm not going to lie. But the Galaxy have been a funny team, as I say. They've been up and they've been down, and they haven't looked completely impressive for 90 minutes straight, but yet they're getting results. When it comes to Austin, as you say, I don't see them staying at the same level. That said, 24 points on the board. I won't use our saying this time, but 24 points on the board is a good amount of points for right now, and they really only kind of probably need 20 more to make a playoff spot, which would be an accomplishment for them this year.
That's the thing. Well, in the Western Conference, is it enough? Because there's going to be some big disparity. So will it be enough? The bottom teams are pretty bad versus the good teams that are really good in the Western Conference. So we'll see. Usually between 44 and 52 is what's needed for the playoffs. Recently, 49 to 52. Even then, it's close. So maybe 44 will be cutting it quite close. But we'll see if they can get the job done, Austin, and maybe make the playoff in their second season.
Yeah, which would be an accomplishment. It's growth. And I don't mind their build there. I just didn't expect them to start as fast as they did because they really don't have stars, which not to be star focused, but you do need that killer goal scoring instinct. That's where I say goals win games. It's why this matters. It's why getting your DPs matter. And it's why they spend so much money and so many DP slots are spent on forwards. It's because that is what kills a result. TFC brought a DP in this offseason. The only DP they brought in offseason that's played so far was a defender. Hasn't really moved the needle that much, right? No. So
he hasn't moved the needle at all because Toronto has the one of the worst defense in the Eastern Conference. Also, the third worst defense in the Eastern Conference behind Montreal and Chicago, which is kind of makes sense when you look at it. But you mentioned goal scorers. They have a goal scorer, but the thing is they don't have another goal scorer. They have a 7-goal scorer. Driussi is the third best in the league, but it's not enough to maybe keep them there long term. They'll need the contribution of others. But Fagundez scored in that game, but it wasn't enough. And LA dominated the second half, and it was 4-1 for the Galaxy. Let's move to our last game we're going to break down today, Duane. A evening that was fun to enjoy. in Seattle. A 2-1 victory, a real Seattle type of game with a top Seattle lineup. Rui Diaz was there. Lodero was there. Jordan Morris was there. They were there, and they played well. On parts, it wasn't easy, and only the last 35 minutes, I would say, was the real Sounders, where they put pressure. Like, do you see those corner numbers? 11? Most of those were in the second half, and most of those were in the second half of the second half, if you catch my drift. To me, that's where they got their identity back. Yesterday was their first time after the Champions League, after the rest, the substitutions, and the injuries this year. This was their top lineup. They're not going to get Joao Paulo. His season might be over. But the rest of the team is going to start gelling, and we saw that in the last 30 minutes of this game. When I think of Seattle and MLS, when I think of franticness, I think of them getting the ball and taking 2 seconds to cross the entirety of the field and putting your goalkeeper on notice. We saw that. We saw Morris do that. We saw Raul Rudiaz score an amazing goal from 30 yards out, curl past the keeper. Kalina did not see it coming. But to me, Jordan Morris, Raul Diaz rejuvenated the season of Seattle, and we're going to see the real Seattle moving forward.
You're right that Seattle is one of the few teams in MLS that has an identifiable style that is going back a decade plus now, and I think that's been designed around the stadium they play in, and more specifically the turf they play on. But yeah, look, it's hard to imagine Seattle being below the red line much longer. As you point out, they are the reverse show me, don't tell me team in MLS. You're gonna have to show me that you're not good before you I believe that you are not good. So yeah, look, it was a good result for them. Charlotte is I think having a decent expansion season, it's fair to say, but they're maybe relying a little bit on the weakness of the East, which is not their fault. They're,
exactly. And they have 2 points from a playoff spot for Charlotte. But to me, this was all about Seattle. They went from the 13th spot in the Western Conference all the way to 10th. And with another good result over the next few games, they will climb above that red line. And they will stay there. Who will be the team to suffer? That's the question when we can ponder, because it's the international break. We'll have a few weeks to look at what's to come in MLS.
Yeah, I think we don't talk about Houston a lot. I think they deserve a lot of credit for their ability to play. Now, where they are right now is probably above their level in terms of the talent, and that's a testament to how well they've been playing. Whether they can keep that or not is a question, but I think you have to give them, as I said, a lot of credit for where they are right now. It's the point of the season where teams start to find their level. The cream rises, so to speak. The rock sinks. I don't know. Is that now saying? It is now. The rock sinks, the cream rises, and we're going to see it. Like, the points don't lie at this point. This is not too early. I still don't necessarily look too close at the schedules until we get to the Canada Day, July 4th break. But we got only 3 more weeks till we get there, really, in terms of playing time, because we got an international break in the middle.
Yeah. But we'll keep an eye, of course, on MLS during the big news. There might be some big news. Players will be playing abroad. And we'll keep an eye, of course, on all of that right here on Soccer Today. By the end of the next week, for sure, maybe before, in the next 10 days or so, Duane and I will reconvene for the Two Solitude Soccer Podcast. It will be available on patreon.com/sports podcasting network. During the international break, we'll break down Canada, the men's national team, Les Rouges, and the road to Qatar 2022. We'll look at what are the choices, what are the travaux, the works in excuse my French, that John Herdman needs to do to get this team ready for Qatar 2022. Potential rosters, who should make the team, a lot of great topics that we will have on an audio version only of the Two Solitude Soccer Podcast on our Patreon page. But if you like Soccer Today, you can catch the podcast version of Soccer Today everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Google Play, Google Podcasts, and everywhere else you can find your favorite show. And there's advertising opportunities. If you'd like to advertise on this show, we have video advertisement. You can have audio advertisement. We can come up with a great way to help each other out. You can contact me at sportspodcastingnetwork@gmail.com. For Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Laramie, and as always, until next time, we wish you a great soccer.